Hey guys, Marstinkin here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so upcoming on Global, we have the EZA for physical LR Trunks. So as always, we're going to do a team building guide for this event. It is a typical LR EZA, so it's only 10 stages. You do get 3 stones per stage, so you still get 30 stones at the end. You get all of the medals that you need to awaken him, and you do get the 5 type Kais as well, so you can get him straight up to SA 25. You also do get some physical orbs, which is nice. Because it's an LR EZA, there's no typing that gets like 80% damage reduction or anything like that, because obviously the key with LR EZAs is that the weakness is legendary power in terms of doing the damage, so having the legendary power link active. So obviously LRs are the way you want to go, and so if they started restricting a whole bunch of typings, like depending on the category, it would mean there'd only be a certain number of LRs you could actually even use in the event. So the weakness category is Space Traveling Warriors. This is absolutely perfect for a physical EZA enemy, because like the extreme STR version of Space Traveling Warriors is ridiculously powerful, but there are a bunch of other options as well, because Space Traveling Warriors is a pretty big category with a lot of different units on it. So as always with my team building guides, I'm going to go over my top picks and honourable mentions for units that you can use on the team. If you think there's any units that I miss out or that I should have talked about in more detail, let me know down below in the comments section. And obviously if you find this guide helpful at all, do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So obviously the straight up best leader to use is the STR Bojack, because he just is the Space Traveling Warriors category leader. 3 key, HP attack and defense 170, so 170 across the board. Obviously the best leader skill for this. There are some other categories that exist within this same parameter of building like a Space Traveling Warriors team, but if you have Bojack, then obviously he's just going to be the all-out better leader to use. He also is a Space Traveling Warriors support unit, so you're only facing one enemy, but he's giving 2 key and 30% attack and defense. So even if you're just running double Bojack leads and then you just have him floating off rotation, he's still providing a lot to the team with that support outside of just the leader skill. And he's a big bad bosses unit, so obviously that always helps as well. So next up we have LR Turles. So not only is he probably like the top pick of unit for the team, because he's an LR, so obviously he can get legendary power active and then he's going to be doing a ton of damage. He's a Terrifying Conquerors leader as well as a Terrifying Conquerors support unit, and Terrifying Conquerors and Space Traveling Warriors have a ridiculous crossover. You can basically make a full Terrifying Conquerors team that are also all Space Traveling Warriors. So he is a very good option if you don't have Bojack, although obviously he only gives 4 key and 130% to stats. So he doesn't have the highest leader skill, but he's definitely a very good leader if you don't have any other options. And like I said, he's a #1 pick for the team, even if you are using a different leader. So he's obviously very, very good. He has the active skill that you can use twice. Unfortunately though, unless you are on 60% HP or less, you can't use it until turn 8, which you're probably never going to get to in an EZA, but in the later stages it's definitely possible that you'll take some big damage, and then you can use his active skill, get guaranteed 24 key, so that means he's effective against all types. It doesn't matter for this event, but he has a high chance of launching an additional super attack, so he can definitely be dishing out a ton of damage. So next up we have the Str Cooler. He's probably the next go-to leader if you don't have Bojack, because his leader skill is Terrifying Conquerors or Transformation Boost, and again you can make a full team with this leader skill that are all Space Traveling Warriors and that are all extreme STR even. So obviously he's a very good leader for the team. When there's only one enemy, as in this case, he's a Transformation Boost support unit, so some of the units won't be covered by that, but some of them will. Even without it, obviously, like I say, he's a go-to next leader if you don't have Bojack, and he's still going to be very, very good. And of course, you are fighting a Hybrid Saiyan, so you can transform on turn 3, and then once he's transformed into Final Form Cooler, he'll just be pushing out tons of damage. He gets guaranteed crits, so he's obviously going to be very strong in this event, even though he's not an LR. So obviously, remember, without the legendary power link active, you're not going to be doing as much damage, but with the fact that he can get multiple additionals, he infinitely stacks attack, like he's going to be really, really good. So next up we have the LR Prime Battle Frieza. He's a free-to-play option, so after his EZA he gives Extreme Class 4 key and 90%. It's not the worst leader skill in the world for a free-to-play unit, and if you're bringing a friend Bojack, like your team is still going to have a decent amount of power, so he's going to be the go-to free-to-play leader for the team. But even if you are, you know, a massive whale with every unit in the game, he's still going to be a really good unit on the team because he fits on all of those different categories. He's on Transformation Boost and Terrifying Conquerors, so he fits on all the team leads that we've discussed so far already. And then, yeah, he's an Extreme STR LR, so of course he's going to be dishing out tons of damage. In the later stages, depending on the leader skills you're running, especially if you're running his, so your team is a little bit weaker overall, maybe going for his 12 key super on purpose will be the way to go rather than the 18 key, because he does raise defense on that. And in slot 3 gets extra key, so he's a perfect unit to float off rotation, and it's not going to be difficult for him to super attack, so he's another very good option. And of course, if you're running Cooler, they have the Frieza family links, so very good. Next up we have the LR full power Frieza, the STR one. Now, I only mention him because he's STR. Like, he's a little bit outdated now. His 18 key super is probably what you're going to go for. I don't like sacrificing HP units, especially in an event like this where you can't use items. But he's a pretty solid unit. When you're on low HP, obviously becomes more powerful. But of course, remember, in an Extreme Z battle, you can't use same name units. And there is, of course, the AGL full power Frieza, who is much better than this guy. So AGL full power Frieza, I mean, I think under Sworn Enemies you can probably run a full Space Traveling Warriors team, so you could potentially use him as a leader with Namek Saga thrown in as well. You could definitely make a full team out of his leader skill, so he would be a decent secondary leader. Remember, of course, though, he's type neutral, so taking a super attack on turn 1 is not going to be great for him, especially in the later stages. But he raises key on his 18 key super, so, you know, he could make a very good slot 2 unit, because you could have like Cooler or Prime Battle Freezer in slot 1. And then, yeah, he's going to dish out a nice amount of damage, raise his defense on super. So again, he's still going to be a bit vulnerable to taking super attacks, but he's going to be able to dish out a ton of damage in this, especially because he's an LR. So if he's getting off his additionals, like if you do put him in slot 1 and take the risk of him potentially taking a super, if he gets hit, he gets that guaranteed additional. So he can put out quite a lot of damage overall. So probably better to bring him than the STR one, even though the STR one obviously has type advantage. Next up we have the third form Frieza. So I thought I'd mention him. He is a type disadvantage unit, so he's not going to do a huge amount of damage unless he's getting crits. But of course the reason we mention him is because he's going to be a really good support unit for the other like Frieza units on the team if you are running the full power Friezas. I'm pretty sure Prime Battle Frieza is on Sworn Enemies as well, is he not? Wow, no, he actually isn't. So he's going to be supporting the full power Frieza at least, and obviously that rotation is pretty ridiculous, this guy with the LR. The LR won't be able to pick up legendary power if you do that, but you could float this guy in the third slot, and then, like I said, have like Prime Battle Frieza in slot 1. So then both the LRs are getting the legendary power link active, and then this guy is massively buffing full power Frieza. And as long as he gets a bunch of additionals, his defense will be good enough to tank normals, probably not supers in the later stages though, so you definitely need to be wary of that. Next up, I thought I'd mention Int LR Bojack, since we just brought up an Int unit. Obviously, if you're running Bojack as the leader, this guy's going to be really good to go with him and activate a bunch of those links. But the same thing kind of applies with the third form Frieza, right? You really don't want him to be taking a super attack. Now, the less HP you have, the more additional defense he gets. But even so, like, he's not going to be tanking super attacks, especially in the later stages. But he is a good unit to fit in if you don't have anyone else and you are running Bojack. Even if you're just running a Bojack friend because you don't have him yourself, then obviously that rotation can be pretty good. Next up, we have, apparently opened that tab twice, we don't need that again. We have the STR Hit. So he is the Extreme STR 50% support unit. Obviously, a lot of people are not going to have him. He's actually one of the 2 out of those units that I don't have. So if you don't summon on those banners, and they haven't been around for God knows how long anyway, you potentially don't have this guy. But he's on Space Traveling Warriors, he's 50% support to Extreme STR, he raises defense on super attack. He's like the perfect slot 3 unit for this team if you are running a lot of Extreme STR units. But he is probably a top pick if you have him, but a lot of people are not going to have him. So then we have the EZA for Jace. I thought I would include him here. Now technically you could use any of the Ginyu Force. Even Ginyu would be okay after supering unless he gets supered because of the type disadvantage. So as a free-to-play option, if you're missing out on any units and you've got empty slots you need to fill on your team, like all of the EZA Ginyu Force are actually pretty good. But I singled out Jace because obviously not only does he have type advantage, he is a support unit and he has the Scouter effect as well. So you can see where super attacks are. So if you are running units like the third form Frieza, imagine how useful it is when you have the rotation of the AGL LR in third form Frieza and then this guy in slot 3, you can make sure that third form Frieza is not taking a super attack that turn because you can see where it is. So definitely the most useful out of the Ginyu Force members, but like I said, you can fill the slot with any of the others except for the LRs, of course, because they don't have their EZAs on global yet, so they won't be particularly good. You could run the tech one as a support unit to help activate legendary power, but his defense is not going to be very good, so you got to be aware of that. Next up we have the Physical Cooler. I included him as an honourable mention just because if you are running Str Cooler, they'll obviously link up really well together. This guy, once he's built up, is really good, but you don't have a huge amount of time to do that in an EZA. But starting off, his attacks are solid anyway. Each attack performed gives him extra attack and defense, so even in the first turn, even if you only get one super attack, his defense is not going to be terrible. But again, he'll be another unit that in the later stages definitely won't be able to tank a super attack, but he will still be very, very good. Next up, we have the Great Ape Raditz. Now, remember, the global version, we have the EZAs for these guys, and they're actually pretty good. You know, they made the Giant Ape ESBR stage no item run possible for global. It was, like, super easy, because these guys are really good, and after supering, they have pretty solid defense. And in an EZA, it's kind of a useful event to just randomly get the change into the Great Ape, because then you have a couple of turns where you're not going to take damage, and you're dishing out free damage to him, which is always good in an event where you can't heal. So definitely very, very useful to bring this guy along. He is also a nuker, so the more orbs you can pick up, the more powerful he will be. So he can be very, very good. And then, of course, there's the Vegeta as well. So even though he's type neutral, he's really good. When you're on 80% or less HP, his attack stat can get up to pretty decent numbers, to be honest. And then again, he can also turn into a Great Ape. So because he's type neutral, in the later stages, if you're not getting supers, the Great Ape attacks are probably not really going to do any damage. But again, you get a couple of free turns to just deal free damage to Trunks. So pretty good. Then we have STR Whis. So we're into the more honourable mention units, but he can be pretty good. He's got that built-in dodge, so you have the chance to take no damage. You can't lower attack in an EZA or seal past the first stage or two for an LR one, so not really that useful there, but good for defense. And then of course, if you have a Beerus on rotation with him, he buffs all allies attack by 50% and recovers 10% HP at the end of the turn, which again, as we've mentioned, you can't use items, so that's pretty useful. Each time he dodges, his defense goes up, so as long as you're not unlucky and he gets nailed with a super attack as the first attack of the turn, he can build up to some pretty solid defense. And then of course that opens you up to the option of running like physical Beerus and running them as a rotation together. Beerus is one of those units that hits a little bit harder after he gets hit, but in something like this, especially where he's type neutral, the ideal rotation would be just have Whis in slot 1, and then he can still deal out some pretty decent damage. If you get to turn 4 and you're on 70% or less HP, you can use his active skill, gives him a buff for attack and defense, and makes him effective against all types. So in an event like this where he's type neutral, that means he's going to do a nice little bit of extra damage. And then I guess as a last resort, if you really want to run Whis and you don't have the physical Beerus, you could run the STR Beerus. I mean, he's not that good, but he's not terrible in an event like this where, you know, he's got type advantage, he's on the right category, you can have him linked up with Whis. So, I mean, he can be okay, but not the best. You can use Whis without having a Beerus, but obviously he's not going to be quite as good, but he's an honourable mention nonetheless. Next up, we have LR Full Power Jiren. Again, he's just an LR that's on the category. He's type neutral. He's aged a bit. People kind of went off of him, I think, just because he is the very basic caveman build, as Goresh dubbed it. But in this, he will obviously still be very good. He's still a very hard-hitting unit. He comes out of the gate with massive numbers. He starts off with these huge stats straight away rather than having to build up to them. So in a short event like an EZA, he can obviously be really, really good. He has to be attacked 5 times for you to use his active skill, which will give him a nice buff. You can't stun or debuff once you get past the first couple of stages anyway. I don't think you can stun at all in an LR one. But the buff for himself makes it worth using. So depending where the attacks are built up, in an EZA, it's not really easy to get hit 5 times in one slot in one turn, which means you wouldn't be able to use his active skill until potentially turn 5, and then the event would be over by then, possibly, depending on how powerful your team is overall. But that will be helpful if you can get it. And then, of course, you can run STR Jiren with him because they have a different name, and they will link up super, super well. STR Jiren, of course, has type advantage, so even though he's aged a little bit, definitely will be interesting to see what his EZA will be. But even though he has aged, he will still be decent in here and can work really well with Jiren. LR Jiren even, and you can of course run Topo either instead of the STR Jiren because he'll be supporting and buffing the LR, or you can just run him as well as a floater because he does support all allies, so even if the other rotation is like, you know, STR Bojack and LR Bojack, he'll still be supporting them. And then he does have damage reduction when HP is 70% or less, so he will be very good as well. So that was just a couple of the honorable mentions that I picked out here, but we've got like the whole Bardock squad is on here. Physical LR Bardock with his EZA is obviously really, really good. Like there are a ton of decent units on this team, but those are the ones I singled out as the top picks or the honorable mentions. So like I said at the very beginning, if there's any units you think I missed or should have talked more about, let me know down below, and let me know what your team build is going to look like for this EZA. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.